This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the true crime podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse and shining a harsh spotlight on the parents, guardians, and caretakers who silence them. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 122, Serenity Deserves Justice. 2 years ago, in episode 21, I told you the story of 1-year-old Sereniti Sutley, whose mother found her gravely injured in her crib on the morning of October 7th, 2017. Serenity was rushed to the hospital in Conneaut, Ohio, where she was pronounced dead. Although almost 5 years have passed since Serenity's death, the man accused of her murder, Joshua Gurto, still has not faced a jury for his crimes. In July of 2022, Ashtabula County Prosecutor Colleen O'Toole filed a motion with the court to dismiss 6 of the 8 charges against him and to drop his remaining murder charge to mere involuntary manslaughter. In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Serenity's great-aunt, Bobbie Blankenship, Grandma Melissa Sutley, and Dad, Brandon Sutley, who shared with me their frustration over the length of the court process and the unwillingness of the current prosecutor to seek justice for the little princess they lost almost 5 years ago. Serenity deserves justice. I'd like to give a quick shout out to my newest patron, Darlene Z. from Bakersfield, California. Thank you so much for your annual pledge, Darlene. I appreciate all of my patrons more than I can tell you. To make a pledge, you can visit patreon.com/stlcpod. I've followed Serenity's story closely since I first covered it in episode 21. This weekend, for the first time in 2 years, I went back and listened to that episode, and it was the first time in those 2 years that I've gone back and listened to an episode from that early in the show's history. All I have to say is, I'm so sorry, everyone. I know I'm opinionated, and I can be a lot to handle even on a good day, but I was really unhappy with my judginess in that episode. I guess I hadn't found the appropriate degree of tact or sensitivity yet. With that in mind, I fully intend to go back and re-edit some of my earlier episodes, or, if necessary, redo them completely. I won't fully revisit the details of Serenity's case in this episode, but I'll give a quick synopsis right now. Serenity died on October 7th, 2017, suffering from injuries that led doctors and police to believe the baby, who had turned 1 not even a month earlier, had been raped and murdered. Serenity's mom, 22-year-old Kelsey Blankenship, and her boyfriend, 37-year-old Joshua Gurto, were questioned by the Conneaut police and released. After an autopsy revealed that Serenity's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, formal charges were filed against Joshua Gurto, who was accused of sexually assaulting and murdering his girlfriend's daughter. Joshua went on the run and led authorities on a 3-week manhunt, which culminated in his arrest without incident in the parking lot of a Sheetz gas station in Franklin Park, Pennsylvania. Joshua was arraigned in November of 2017 on multiple charges, including 2 counts of aggravated murder, 3 counts of murder, and 1 count each of rape, felonious assault, and domestic violence. Then Ashtabula County Prosecutor Nick Iarocci initially intended to seek the death penalty. A year later, based on evidence that has never been made public, Kelsey Blankenship was arrested and charged with 2 counts of felony murder, 1 count of felonious assault, 2 second-degree felony counts of endangering children, 1 third-degree felony count of endangering children, and 1 misdemeanor count of domestic violence. In December of 2020, Joshua Gurto was indicted in a 16-year-old rape and burglary case after an investigation by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation's new cold case unit. His was the first indictment connected to the cold case unit's work. He was charged with 2 first-degree felony counts of aggravated burglary, 1 first-degree felony count of rape, and one second-degree count of felonious assault, all stemming from an incident in which he broke into a victim's home and sexually assaulted her in December of 2004. COVID-19 delayed court proceedings pretty much everywhere by a significant amount. In the meantime, the prosecutor on both Joshua and Kelsey's cases changed twice. Prosecutor Nick Iarocci was elected to the position of Conneaut Municipal Judge, and in his place, Chief Assistant County Prosecutor Cecilia Cooper was appointed County Prosecutor in January of 2020. In November of the same year, Ms. Cooper ran for the position but was defeated by former Ohio Appellate Judge Colleen O'Toole. In February of 2021, Prosecutor O'Toole announced that her office had reached a stipulated plea and sentencing agreement with Kelsey Blankenship. On March 5, 2021, in exchange for pleading guilty to reduced charges of involuntary manslaughter, a first-degree felony, and third-degree felony child endangerment, 26-year-old Kelsey was sentenced by Common Pleas Judge Marianne Saison to 6 years in prison. Kelsey's release date is currently listed on the Ohio Department of Corrections website as October 10, 2024. Then, in October of 2021, Prosecutor O'Toole filed a motion for a plea deal for Joshua Gurto. Although the details of that deal haven't been released, the rumor mill said that if the judge approved the motion, Joshua Gurto could get out of prison in as few as 18 years for both of the cases against him. The people of Ashtabula County, including Serenity's family, revolted against the plea deal. Fortunately, Judge Saison rejected the motion just a couple of weeks later. In apparent retaliation, in late November, Prosecutor O'Toole filed an affidavit with the Ohio Supreme Court to disqualify Judge Saison from Gurto's 2 open cases. Judge Saison recused herself from both Serenity's case and the 2004 burglary and rape case in January of this year, and so did 2 other Ashtabula County Court of Common Pleas judges as well. A visiting judge was then appointed to both cases, retired Judge Patricia Cosgrove. Subsequent to that, in relation to the 2004 rape and burglary, Gurto pleaded guilty to all of the charges against him in that case. On May 16th, Judge Cosgrove sentenced him to the maximum on each charge to be served consecutively, which meant a sentence of 28 years in prison with credit for 515 days time served. At the sentencing, Judge Cosgrove said that if she had given him a light sentence, the safety of the community would be at stake. Gurto is now serving time in the Correctional Reception Center in Orient, Ohio, awaiting trial in Serenity's case. Well, he won't make it to trial if Colleen O'Toole has anything to say about it. Prosecutor O'Toole has filed a motion seeking to dismiss 6 of the 8 charges against Joshua Gurto, including 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of murder, plus the charges of rape and domestic violence. This would leave him charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of felonious assault. That's not all, though. Ms. O'Toole also wants to amend the remaining count of murder to 1 count of involuntary manslaughter. Needless to say, anyone who knows anything about this case or cares about baby Serenity in any way is furious about this. A piece in the Star-Beacon on July 23rd was titled, "Our View: Lesser Charges Against Gurto Do Not Represent Justice." Reporters have interviewed Serenity's family members who were disgusted by this so-called prosecutor who has done nothing but try to let Gurto essentially get away with Serenity's murder since she took over the case. Colleen O'Toole doesn't even refer to Serenity by name when giving statements or speaking to reporters. She only calls the baby this child, as if her name doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you that the name Serenity Jazzlynn-Sky Blankenship Sutley does matter, and so does true justice for this innocent little girl who barely had time to celebrate her first birthday in a sash and a princess birthday tiara before her life was stolen in a horrific, brutal manner. Judge Patricia Cosgrove, please make the right decision. Deny the prosecution's motion. Colleen O'Toole needs to recuse herself from this case since she clearly doesn't feel confident in her ability to prosecute it. Serenity deserves justice. After this quick sponsor break, you'll hear my conversation from this past weekend with Serenity's great-aunt, Bobbie Blankenship, the man who has acted as Serenity's father since she was born, Brandon Sutley, and her grandma, Melissa Sutley. My guests on the podcast today are Melissa Sutley, Serenity's grandmother, Brandon Sutley, Serenity's dad, and Bobbie Blankenship, Serenity's great-aunt. Thank you very much, all of you, for being on the show. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
I've been following Serenity's case for a couple of years since I first learned about what happened to her, and she has a huge piece of my heart. I've been very closely following everything, and I'm so sorry that the prosecutor who took over after Cecilia Cooper was in there has just failed your families so egregiously, and she continues to try to fail Serenity and justice for her.
We agree.
It can't be easy just waiting this long. I mean, it's been nearly 5 years at this point for you to keep seeing things like this coming up and proposed plea deals and then the judge being removed from the case. There's been a lot of things going on.
Then it leaves with so many more how she's treated it. It leaves so much wide open. It's like what you heard in the beginning. Is it what's really true? Is she really right? But after conversation with Cecilia Cooper and talking to Nick, when Nick was with us, they were very confident that they had a conviction here. There's totes and totes of evidence for a conviction on this. There was enough evidence to convict him.
Like, that is our biggest thing. We don't understand, how did these two prosecutors have enough confidence and they were, ready to try this case and take it to trial and never even consider a plea deal. But now Colleen O'Toole, the new prosecutor, has no confidence. We don't understand, we don't get how, you can go from two prosecutors having all the confidence in the world to this one not saying that there is.
The sad part about it is Nick Irochi came into Ashtabula County and he started cracking down on sex crimes, because Ashtabula County has been a very bad county for sex crimes to begin with. Okay, so Nick Irochi steps up and he starts cracking down harder and more harsher punishments for these cases. And then Cecilia Cooper comes in, and Cecilia Cooper has the same mind frame that Nick Irochi has. And here, then you come in with Colleen O'Toole, and it's like she's flipped the pedophile switch and says, this is what we stand up for.
Right. It's so strange that she has no confidence in it whatsoever. And I've seen she's gotten convictions on other things, but she also has said she has no tolerance for animal abusers. But it seems that she's just more than willing to let a pedophile child murderer skate by on almost no charge.
Obviously our main goal is we want justice for Serenity, but not just Serenity, all these babies. And if you look back through her cases, she wants to post in the paper and say that she is tough on abuse and tough on people who hurt kids. But go back and look at all of her cases. Look them up. She doesn't take them to jury. She doesn't take them to trial. She gets a plea deal out of them. There might be one or two that went to jury, but she didn't do it. Her assistant prosecutor, Dawn, did.
Wow.
And she's made several comments, like in our private meetings. And I think I could probably say this clearly without it causing an issue, a legal issue. But she has said several times in those meetings about how if this would have been charged properly, that he would never have the attorney that he has. That Sean Hennessy is a top attorney. I think she's intimidated by him.
Oh, definitely.
I full-heartedly believe that. I think she doesn't have the backbone. She don't have the confidence. She doesn't have the compassion. You know what I mean? And most importantly, she is intimidated by that man.
And it certainly doesn't help her image that she never says Serenity's name. That's been getting under my skin.
Never.
I mean, this child has a name, and she deserves to have it uttered.
Absolutely. And she's never, not once. That's another thing. She keeps putting in the papers that she's had discussions with the family. She spoke with the family. Since O'Toole has been in office, we've seen her, once?
I've met with her 3 different times.
So
Josh twice, because the one when she first put the plea deal on the table, which when we're allowed to speak on that plea deal, they have no clue just how disgusting that plea deal is. It's insulting.
It's very insulting.
Because you, not only did she include Serenity's case, but she included that other rape case in that plea deal. And it's disgusting. And all I can say is we already got more years out of that other rape case than what was put on that table.
Right. And I just don't feel that those sentences can run concurrently. They're two completely separate crimes and two completely separate decades. And Serenity deserves her justice individually, not lumped in with a brother.
Right. That's how we feel. That's the other victim's justice.
Right, which of course she deserves as well, but it should be its own, and the two crimes are not related. He's a clearly dangerous man. There's no way he should be out in public.
Not at all. So right now, all of our hope all of our prayers, all of our belief, trust is 100% with Patricia Cosgrove in making the right decision on this.
I hope she has the same fortitude that Judge Cezanne seemed to have. She seemed to have a lot of commitment to the case and to justice. And when she left, I can only imagine how upset you all were.
We were very upset, very.
Because we have lost our entire sports system through this entire case. We lost Nick, we lost Cecilia Cooper, we lost Judge Cezanne, we lost Dawn from Victims of Crime, and we also just recently lost Hattie as well from Victims of Crime. And now we're dealing with a new girl from Victims of Crime, which she has no empathy or compassion. She's like, well, it's just too much work for me to go through this file because it's too thick to find everybody's numbers. Can you give it to me? And then you got Colleen O'Toole that thinks she has it in her mind frame that these victims of crime advocates, they're there working underneath her. And they're not. They're there to work for the victim, which is what Colleen is supposed to be there for. But it's obvious, very apparent to us that she's on the defensive side.
Yeah, I've had to wonder, is there any deeply buried connection between her and Gurto's family or something? Because she just seems to be ready to let him walk free tomorrow.
So from my understanding, and obviously I can't say like where I've got, some of the information that I have, but from what we have heard from other people in the community and stuff, that there's not a connection, but she's very big on reform. I understand that you don't want to send these people to prison for the rest of their lives, but as a prosecutor with a case like ours, this is different. This is not something that you should be doing your reform stuff on. This case is completely different. The life of a baby is completely different than what some of these other cases are.
And another thing, a statement straight out of her mouth is, she had stated in one of the meetings that a person like this doesn't go this many years without victimizing somebody else. That she is fully aware that there is probably more victims out there because of him. So she knows he's a monster.
Right, exactly. I was thinking about that this morning. Just how likely is it that he hasn't harmed anyone else? And how likely is it that maybe we'll find out later on that there were other victims?
And maybe with it coming out in the public like it is now, some of them other victims will decide if they want to come forward and speak on it.
I hope so, for their sake and also just for the sake of the public, getting this man off the streets for as long as humanly possible.
Right.
And it is 100% possible that he could be put away for life. I don't see any reason why these crimes wouldn't allow that if she would actually do her job.
Even if he set his sentence for what her new indictment and what he got from the other case, he could still walk out of there at 95 because I'm sorry, prison preserves a human being.
Right. He's not exposed to a lot of the issues outside the walls. So anything's possible. It's just terrifying to think that he could walk free at any point.
Right. Whether he's a 95 harmless man or not, he's still, people like that just don't click off. I'm a victim of sexual abuse, a lot of sexual abuse myself. People like that don't click and stop. They continue that behavior. And they prey on young girls that don't have any stability, no real connections with their family. They prey on females like that.
Yeah, they know exactly what type of victim to look for.
Right. Even like with Kelsey's situation, this should build awareness for other young parents, whether it be male or female. Don't just bring some stranger in your child's life. You need to know and do your research and trust more, because Kelsey's sentence is because she was ignorant. She trusted somebody around her child that she didn't know. This happened, and because she reached out when she was going through the postpartum, they used that against her, and she ended up getting into some serious trouble. And now her daughter's dead, not because of what she did to this child, but because she allowed a stranger into her life to do this to her child.
This is unusual. I've covered a lot of cases, and I'm no expert. I'm just a mom in New Jersey who decided to take this on. But from what I've seen, it is very unusual for a woman to be charged who has just allowed a person into their home who did these things to their child, as opposed to knowing he had a history, which I don't believe Kelsey knew that he had any kind of...
She's too dumb for that.
Oh.
I'm not trying to be mean on Kelsey, because Kelsey is not my child, but I love her as she is my child. Actually, I call her my God-given child.
That's sweet. When I first did the episode 100 episodes ago, I felt a lot more vitriol toward Kelsey, but over time I have definitely mellowed on that regard, learning a lot more about how these things happen. And I do feel for her because it does feel like he preyed on her, and he probably targeted her because of her weakness, but also because she had a young, vulnerable child.
Yes.
Right.
And that's our thing. Like, everybody criticizes this and they have their opinion about that, and we got to hear all these horrible things.
Right.
They know the facts, they know the situation, but they don't know all the facts around the situation and the steps that were made to keep her safe. Because Kelsey gave her child to somebody else to take care of, to keep her safe. Kelsey did everything within her power to protect that baby. She loved that baby. Yeah, she wasn't, a perfect mom, but she was a young mom and she didn't have a good example of a mom. Her childhood, some of it she self-inflicted, because what child wants to be around the boring parent that's going to put rules and guidelines? They want to be around the fun parent that's going to let them live and choose their life how they want to live it.
Teenagers always know best.
Right.
And unfortunately, and it makes me so mad when I hear Colleen O'Toole in the paper talking about, well, the circumstances, her family. First of all, Kelsey doesn't come from an awful family. Like, that's one of the parts. Like, she had a support system if she chose to use it. Yes, I understand at that age, you're young. You don't want to hear your family's judgment. You don't want to be, having your family talk about you. So you try not to, involve your family. But there, she has a huge family, whether it be an adopted family, her own family like Melissa's, who have just, took her in and accepted her as their own. She had a support system. She tried to do it on her own. And when she couldn't do it on her own, she asked for help. She took the help she got. And there's no point in this. Yes, we all still have, don't get us wrong. We have questions. We still have questions that will probably never be answered, because truthfully, Kelsey won't talk about it now that it's, she's been sentenced, and, she won't give us answers. We're obviously not going to get answers from Josh, and, the prosecution, until this is over, they're not going to give us answers that we want either. So we're always going to have questions and probably never the answers we want.
Yeah, it's got to be very complicated depending on the level of involvement and how guilty Kelsey feels. And there's probably things she doesn't want people to know, and that's probably understandable. Even if she just feels that she failed Serenity in certain ways, she may not be comfortable talking about it.
As her family, we truthfully believe if she would have took it to jury, I truthfully believe that she would have won. But she took the plea. I think she took the plea deal just out of guilt. Not guilt of what she was charged with, but more as out of her own guilt for bringing this man into her life and this happening.
Survivor's guilt.
Because she has said many times, I wish it would have been me instead.
Yeah, and when it first happened, Kelsey wasn't out of the three of us. Kelsey was with us 24/7. She was not alone.
Good.
For a
we
year
know
after.
what, And Kelsey's not one to keep her mouth shut. She did something.
Yeah, she's definitely going to tell someone something. So, but that being said, though, like, even after all this stuff happened, I hear Colleen Toole talking about, well, Kelsey's, she was a recovering addict. We don't hide that from nobody. Nobody in this life is perfect.
Right.
It doesn't mean that baby's life was insignificant.
But the part that we look at is she was in recovery. She went every week for a drug test. She passed every week. For a year straight, she was never out of not one of our sites. She passed every test they gave her. Like, when they want to sit there and throw her past at her, we're like, you might have seen the past before Serenity, but after Serenity,
that's different.
It's different. She passed everything. She did everything possibly. Took
they
every
checked
class.
Her levels on stuff because she tried to overdose on her one psych med. So they checked her levels on everything to make sure that the medication that she was prescribed was in her system in the right level. So that's a more intense drug test. You know what I'm saying? So she wasn't on drugs, people. She wasn't on drugs.
No, and people have problems.
Right. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has skeletons. And we truthfully believe that in her case at this point in time, hers is she believed in somebody that she didn't know enough about yet. And unfortunately, I look out here at like Melissa was saying,
a wolf always comes in sheep's
we look
clothing.
out here at these young girls or even young males now that have little kids, and they just want someone to love them. They just want someone to be with that's going to love them. They don't take 6 months to get to know that person. They don't take the time to get to know this person before they move them into their homes.
And that's a sad today reality.
And they could look like a knight in shining armor when you first meet them, but you don't know when you didn't, people don't take the time to get to know that other person. And it can happen to anybody.
Yes.
And if at anything, by the end of all of this, and when this case is all over and we're done thinking about all the horrible things that happened to her, to use all of this as awareness and to maybe help protect somebody else's child. Because if it reaches one person in each town, imagine how many babies this story saved.
Exactly. That's the important thing about raising awareness like this. And I've had people say, oh, you don't need to raise awareness. People know child abuse happens. Well, of course they know it happens, but they don't know what to look for.
And when you go into the deep details, it makes them second guess.
Right.
But the other part that people don't seem to understand is, yes, people are aware that, yes, child abuse happens in this country, but you know what? They always think, oh, well, it won't happen in my house, or it doesn't happen next door, or oh, that family's too nice of a family. Well, guess what? It happens in the rich neighborhood, the poor neighborhood, the black neighborhood, the white neighborhood. It happens in everyone's neighborhood. And people always want to turn a blind eye. Well, not in my neighborhood or not my family member. My family wouldn't do that.
Yeah. And it's hard to guess. You could never really guess when someone has the capability. And it's so difficult to say. So I think it's so important to tell people these details as much as it's awful to hear. If we don't know what we're looking for, we won't know how to intervene.
Exactly.
Right.
And now another pause for a sponsor break.
And as for Colleen, we just don't feel, I understand her job. As a prosecutor, you have to leave your personal feelings out of it. So we understand to a point, but as a human being, if you don't have sympathy for our family, that's fine, but at least have it for this baby, for Serenity, for this victim.
Right.
And we don't feel like she has any of that. Even when we went to the last hearing where she tried to do the plea deal, and, again, we can't talk about all those details, but I can say, we were told before that hearing to have statements wrote and, where we were going to be able to say something with the judge. And, when we get there, O'Toole looks at the judge and pretty much just flat out tells the judge she doesn't want to hear from the family.
And she's the one that told us to write them said statements as well.
Right. But then she didn't want to hear from any of us.
Right. And then when she told us the plea deal, she didn't tell us all the details of that plea deal. Not at all. We did not hear all the details until we were in that hearing with the judge. She's left us on what she's wanted us to hear, and that's it.
The bare minimum.
It's just so unfair to all of you.
We've heard that she has said in the, courthouse in front of people, talking in the hallways and stuff, I shouldn't have to deal with the family. You are a prosecutor. It is your job to deal with the family. It is your job to deal with the victim. That is what you took on when you took on this job.
I don't understand why she ran for prosecutor in the first place.
And then when she talks about the family in the court hearings or, when we want to speak to her, I can't talk to all these people. There's literally maybe 5 of us that, go to stuff and want to be a part, and she can't deal with 5 people.
She can't even deal with one. She won't even come talk to me when it's just me sitting at that pew, because I don't miss any of the hearings. I'm at every single fucking hearing. Do not miss none of them. I am not going to give up on this baby girl. I will fight all the way to the end. I don't care how many doors I got to pound on. I don't care how many windows I got to smash out, how many tables I got to pound on. I don't give a fuck.
Her life mattered.
Right. And she won't even come out and have a conversation with me.
That's just, it's pathetic.
And then when she does speak about the family, the judge went around the courtroom and asked, who are you? How are you related? So when she's doing that, she gets through us, and then it gets back to O'Toole, and O'Toole says, well, they're not really family. How are you going to look at the baby's father and say, well, you're not really family? First of all, he's been there since the day she found out she was pregnant. He's on the birth certificate. I don't care if another man's DNA says that he is the real father. That doesn't make you a father. The one that's on the birth certificate, the one that was there to change diapers, to feed this baby, to clothe this, that is the father.
Every night going and putting her to bed.
And for her to look at him and say, well, you're not the real father. Who does that? He's on the birth certificate. He's been there since day one. So for O'Toole to look at the one who is on the birth certificate, the one who has been there to change the diapers and feed her and has been there since day one, to look at him and say, well, you're not the real father. That's how she treats the family.
Well, and the guy that actually is the DNA father didn't even go do the DNA test until after she was put in the ground.
For her to look at him and say that, like, where is your sympathy for people altogether? Like,
humanity.
Yeah, she has no business doing what she's doing. She has no business. Go back to the law office, honey, because you're not educated enough.
It seems like it was just all about the promotion and not about the work itself.
Yep.
Correct.
The one thing I could think of is, I don't know who would be responsible for making a decision like this, but I've seen in other cases a prosecutor be recused or taken off the case and a special prosecutor brought in from another county.
We are in the process of trying to have that happen.
Oh, good.
We have put a link out there for everyone to, hopefully enough people putting in a complaint, pretty much. There's another word for it, but if everybody file, we're hoping that we put that link out there with enough people filing complaints that the Attorney General will step in on this.
Yes. If you show me where that link is, I'll boost that signal for you. I will happily do that. I've been posting about this for a couple of weeks since I heard this abomination. I've had people say, what can we do? So I'm sure we'll have a lot of people helping out that way.
Yeah, and then we're meeting at the courthouse at 9 a.m. on the 12th, which is on a Friday. We don't want it to get ugly and unnecessary. We want it to be peaceful, and we want to stand our ground that, 19 years just isn't enough for the death of a baby.
Right, especially not the way he went about it and the things he did. It's nowhere near enough.
Well, some of the details, which we're not allowed to talk about, were premature charges.
Even if they were to lower the one charge to felonious assault, we don't have an argument with that. Our argument was with the involuntary manslaughter.
Yes. There's nothing involuntary about it.
Correct. So for her to drop the other charges and to lower the one, we would step back and be like, okay, not that big of a deal. But for her to want to lower the murder charge to involuntary manslaughter, that is the part that we just can't wrap our heads around.
Serenity didn't get to have a voice. She didn't get to experience her voice yet. So we got to be the voice for her. She don't want us to be that voice because we are speaking our minds from our experiences as being adults and not a child.
Yeah, but she didn't have a chance to be her own voice, so
right.
She needs someone else to amplify that and to be that for her.
Absolutely. And what my point, and I've been pointing out very clearly, involuntary manslaughter, 11 years is the max sentence for that charge. She didn't even get 13 months to live. And that's what that charge is for her murder, is for her death. 11 years for the death of a 12-and-a-half-month-old baby.
It's outrageous that she would even propose that based on everything that they've told the public, let alone what you all know. I can see why you fight so hard.
So this is the way I look at it. As a human being, as a person, as a mom, I don't want to fight for anybody's baby this hard. Like, that's the part I don't understand. Like, if this wasn't our family, Serenity wasn't our little baby that got murdered, if it was a neighbor's baby, if it was someone else's baby that we didn't even know, we would want the same justice.
No matter who it is, we're still going to love and we're still going to be there to support each other because that's the humane thing to do.
The only way to pick somebody up is by grabbing their arm and helping them up. And that's the only way you can live your life in honesty.
Exactly. That's what we're here for. I can't imagine not feeling that way. And it's clear that Colleen O'Toole doesn't have those same sensibilities, and that's why she doesn't belong where she is. I just want to help you guys get the word out for this. And like you said, if you have a link where there's information that we can use to contact someone and it will actually make a difference, that's important.
And that is our other, we're hoping the community will come out and stand with us on the 12th at the courthouse to just show her, like, look, it's not just our family. This is the whole community that wants justice, that we want to see something happen with this. And I understand that, it takes time and then there's a process, but we're at almost 5 years. How much longer does it take? And that's where we're at with it. She'd be starting kindergarten this year. We should be thinking about the happy times that we did have with her instead of, there's another court hearing coming up, or there's another conference coming up, or, they continued it again. Or it's like literally every time we think that we're finally about to get justice, there's another wall in our way.
It's time you had at least some sort of resolution so you can look to heal and move forward.
Yeah, we need this. It's killing us. I feel more traumatized dealing with Colleen O'Toole than why we're even dealing with this to begin with.
Because you're being dismissed and invalidated everything you're saying. She's just turning around and tossing it right in the trash.
Yep.
Well, I'm so sorry you're all going through this.
And we appreciate that. And that's the thing. Like, we understand we're never going to get that time with her. But if a prosecutor is going to let something like this go, other parents, other aunts and uncles, other grandparents, they're going to miss time with their babies too, because stuff like this happens every day in our world.
Yeah, it does.
And it shouldn't.
It does.
Right. And the more we let it happen and the more we let these people get away with it, the more they're going to feel emboldened to continue.
Well, what's a couple years in jail? Fuck it. I'll be out in no time to do it again.
And that's the way, another thing that how we're looking at this, like, if these people, it's not just men, women, there's women out there that do this stuff too. But for these people, if they don't think that there's any consequences, then they're going to continue to do this.
And hopefully Judge Cosgrove will make the right decision.
We've had people ask us, oh, it's been almost 5 years. Why are you still fighting this? Why are you still posting it on social media? Why are you still making it go to the paper? Because until she gets justice, we're not going to stop. Like, are we supposed to just sit down and forget that this happened and be like, oh, well, it's over? Well, it's not over. She's still gone and she still hasn't got justice.
No, there's no letting it go. If anyone's able to attend the rally on August 12th, 9 a.m. at the Ashtabula County Courthouse, I would definitely encourage that.
Bring signs.
Well, thank you all so much for participating and for getting your voices out there and for being Serenity's voice. I will be glad to help in any way I can. So please feel free to reach out.
We just want to thank you for covering this and helping make people aware of what is going on. And we just want to say to everybody, if they have the chance, send that grievance to the district attorney, send them to the governor. There's a link. We want the attorney general, someone to step in and look at this case and be like, what is going on in this county?
Because I think it's going to open up a can of worms.
Yeah. And you know what? It should. This is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I do want to say there was a family, a young father who reached out to me this week after he saw the stuff in the newspaper. Now, I can't give his name or any of that stuff, but I can say, he reached out to us because he had an issue with his daughter being sexually molested and abused, and he took it to the court and he took it to Prosecutor O'Toole, and she pretty much looked at him and said, there's not enough evidence. You just sent this man away telling him there's not enough evidence to prosecute the person who did this. So now when this father retaliates and does something about it, she'll put him in jail though.
Yeah, the justice is backwards.
And that family does plan on coming to the rally on the 12th, and hopefully we can help make, his voice heard too.
And once it's all said and done, if you all want to come back on the show and talk about the plea deal, I'm more than happy to help you amplify your voices as well, because there's been a lot of injustice that you've all been forced to go through.
And again, we're just so grateful and thankful that you are helping us put this out there and letting people hear.
Fight for Serenity.
Thank you so much to Bobbie, Melissa, and Brandon for talking with me about Serenity and how deeply important it is that this sweet baby girl gets justice. The man accused of her murder is a violent, brutal, remorseless individual who undoubtedly poses a danger to others in the community, and he cannot be allowed to walk free at the end of his 28-year sentence for rape and burglary. Again, I implore Judge Cosgrove to deny the motion. What can we do in the meantime? As Serenity's family suggested, we can contact the Ohio Attorney General, Dave Yost, and ask him to remove Colleen O'Toole as prosecutor from this case. We can also reach out to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and write to Judge Patricia Cosgrove, who is a visiting judge at the Ashtabula County Courthouse. I will provide all of the contact information you might need in the show notes for this episode. Colleen O'Toole doesn't have the backbone necessary to take Joshua Gurto to trial and figuratively crucify him, which is exactly what he deserves. As for Serenity, she deserves justice. That's it for this week. Join me next week for another episode. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com, where you can listen to episodes or become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to bonus content and exclusive gifts. Follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Suffer the Little Children Pod, and on Twitter and TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook and Instagram. For more stories like the one you heard today, visit sufferthelittlechildrenblog.com. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. All music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. Email tips, comments, questions, or case suggestions to sufferthelittlechildren.pod@gmail.com. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. If you see something, say something. Until next week, bye everyone.